Let yourself settle now. Let your body grow heavy and warm. And allow your thoughts to soften, like the last light of an evening sky slowly fading into night. There is nowhere you need to be. Nothing you need to do. Just rest here, and let these gentle wonders wash over you. Tonight, we begin at the very beginning. Not just the beginning of your day, or your week, or even your life, but the beginning of everything. And what a beginning it was. There is a single line, ancient beyond measure, that has been quietly sitting at the opening of one of the oldest texts ever written. 4 simple words. In the beginning, God created. That's it. That's where everything starts. And for thousands of years, many people assumed this was simply poetic language. A story. A metaphor. But modern cosmology, the science of the universe itself, now tells us something remarkable. The universe did, in fact, have a beginning. It was not always there. It did not always exist. There was a moment, a precise, singular moment, when time, space, matter, and energy came into being from nothing. Scientists call it the Big Bang. The ancient text calls it creation. And both, it turns out, are pointing at the same astonishing truth. And consider this. When you read the ancient account of that creation carefully, something quietly extraordinary reveals itself. The sequence. The order in which things appear. First light, then atmosphere, then dry land, then plant life, then sea creatures, then animals, then humanity. And when you lay that sequence beside what science has independently pieced together over centuries, the emergence of light energy, the formation of the atmosphere, the rising of the continents, the progression of life, they trace the same arc. Written thousands of years before telescopes, before biology, before geology, before any of the tools we now use to understand our world. And yet, there it is. Rest easy with that thought for a moment. Let it settle. Now imagine the night sky above you, vast and endless, scattered with stars like grains of light. The Book of Job, one of the oldest writings in existence, speaks of God who stretches out the heavens. A curious phrase. For centuries, people read it and moved on. But in the 20th century, astronomers made one of the most mind-bending discoveries in human history. The universe is expanding. Right now, in every direction, the fabric of space itself is stretching, carrying galaxies apart from one another like dots on the surface of a slowly inflating balloon. The heavens are, quite literally, being stretched out. And somehow, long before Edwin Hubble pointed his telescope at the sky and measured that expansion, these ancient words had already captured it. And consider this. In that same ancient book, in a passage describing the foundations of the earth, there is a quiet, almost throwaway line. It says the earth is hung upon nothing. Suspended. In the ancient world, this was a radical notion. Cultures around the world imagined the earth resting on the back of a great animal, or held up by pillars, or carried on the shoulders of a god. The idea that it simply floats, that it is suspended in the void of space with nothing beneath it, was not an obvious one. And yet, there it is. Written at a time when no one had ever seen the earth from above. No satellite had ever looked down on the blue marble drifting in the dark. The earth hangs upon nothing. And indeed, it does. Let your breathing slow now. In and out. You are held, just as the earth is held, gently, invisibly, perfectly. The same ancient text speaks of the circle of the earth, a word in the original language that means something round, something spherical. For centuries, many believed the world was flat, and the idea of a spherical earth was considered absurd by many cultures. Yet here, quietly embedded in these ancient pages is the suggestion of a round world. A world seen, perhaps, from a perspective that no human eye had yet reached. And then there is the matter of the laws. Because it isn't just the universe that began, and it isn't just the earth that hangs in space, it is the extraordinary, almost unbelievable lawfulness of it all. The Book of Job contains a passage where the voice from the whirlwind asks a series of searching questions about the foundations of existence. Where were you when the morning stars sang together? Can you bind the Pleiades, or loose the belt of Orion? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? What is being described in this ancient poetry is something scientists now call the laws of nature, the fixed, universal, mathematical rules that govern how everything behaves. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. These laws don't change. They hold, everywhere, always. And the ancient writers seem to understand that the universe is not chaos. It is governed. It runs according to something. Something consistent, something reliable, something that can be studied and known. Now drift with this thought, the stars themselves. When you look up at the night sky on a clear night, you might count a few thousand stars with the naked eye. Ancient peoples sometimes spoke of the stars as being beyond number, innumerable as the sand. And for a long time, astronomers thought they could eventually count them all, that the Milky Way was the whole of the universe, containing perhaps a few 100 million stars. But as the decades passed and the telescopes grew more powerful, the number kept growing. Billions, hundreds of billions, and then billions of galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars. The number is, for all practical human purposes, uncountable. And yet, remarkably, the universe does have a finite number of stars. There is a number. We simply cannot reach it. Countless to us, yet counted, it seems, by something greater. And consider this. The Apostle Paul, writing in the 1st century, made a seemingly offhand remark that has quietly fascinated scientists and scholars for generations. He wrote that one star differs from another star in glory. At the time, this would have seemed like simple poetry, a metaphor, perhaps, for the different brightness of the stars. But modern astrophysics tells us that this is literally, precisely true. Stars vary enormously, in size, in temperature, in luminosity, in color, in age. Some are red dwarfs, cool and dim, barely smoldering. Others are blue supergiants, burning so brightly they consume themselves in mere millions of years. No two stars are quite alike. Each one differs from the others in glory. And then, finally, there is something gentle and profound hidden in the very structure of the creation story itself. The text tells us that on the 6th day, the work of creation was finished. Completed. Done. And when physicists began studying the conservation of matter and energy, the principle that matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only transformed, they were, in a sense, confirming something that had already been said. The total amount of matter and energy in the universe is fixed. Complete. Finished. Nothing new has been added since the beginning. And yet, slowly, quietly, something else is happening. The universe is winding down. Stars are burning out. Energy is becoming less ordered, less usable. Scientists call this entropy, the gradual drift of all things toward disorder. And the ancient writers seem to sense this too. The Psalms speak of the heavens and the earth wearing out like a garment, aging, growing old, slowly fading. The universe had a beginning, and it moves, gently and inevitably, toward an end. How extraordinary that the same pages which describe the first moment of creation also describe its slow unraveling. That the same ancient voice which said "Let there be light" also whispers of a universe that grows old, like a coat folded up and set aside when its time has come. Rest now in that great sweep of time. From the very first moment of light to the slow, graceful fading of the stars, you exist somewhere in the middle of an immense, beautiful, lawful, wonder-filled universe. And tonight, you don't need to understand it all. You only need to rest inside it. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift, like starlight crossing the dark. You are safe. You are still. And the universe, vast and ancient and endlessly surprising, holds you gently as you sleep. And so we rest here still, carried gently forward on the quiet current of wonder. The universe has been laid out before us. Its beginning, its laws, its countless stars, its slow and graceful aging. And now, we come a little closer to home. Down through the vast dark of space, past the pale blue light of our world seen from a distance, down through the clouds and into the living, breathing world we know. The world of water, and wind, and ocean, and stone. The world that was made, it seems, with a care and a precision that only grows more astonishing the closer you look. Let your body sink a little deeper now. Feel the weight of your limbs, warm and heavy, and let your breath come slowly, easily, without effort. There is nothing to figure out tonight, only things to gently wonder at. Think for a moment about water. Simple, ordinary water. The thing you drink without thinking. The thing that falls from the sky on gray afternoons. The thing that fills the oceans and runs through the veins of every living thing on Earth. We take it entirely for granted. And yet, the story of water is one of the most elegant, endlessly repeating stories on this planet. Water rises from the surface of the sea, lifted invisibly into the air by the warmth of the sun. It gathers into clouds, drifting on the wind, carried silently over land. And then it falls, as rain, as dew, as snow, soaking into the ground, running into streams, flowing into rivers, and finding its way, eventually, back to the sea. And then it begins again. It has been beginning again, over and over, for billions of years. What is remarkable is that this cycle, this precise, self-sustaining loop of evaporation and precipitation and return, is described in ancient texts with quiet accuracy. The writer of Ecclesiastes, reflecting on the rhythms of the world, noted that all the rivers run into the sea, and yet the sea is never full, because the water returns to the place from which the rivers came, and the cycle begins again. This is the water cycle, described not in a science textbook, but in ancient poetry, thousands of years before the mechanisms of evaporation and atmospheric pressure were understood. And yet, there it is, gently, almost casually, captured in a handful of words. And consider this, the ancient texts speak not only of rain falling, but of rain being measured, of water being weighed. There is a passage in Job that speaks of God making a weight for the wind and meting out the waters by measure. To a modern meteorologist, this language is quietly precise. Rainfall is indeed measured, in millimeters and inches, in watershed volumes, in atmospheric pressure gradients that determine where and when and how much water falls. The distribution of rainfall across the Earth is not random. It follows patterns, governed by temperature and pressure and the rotation of the Earth itself. It is, in a very real sense, regulated. And the ancient writers, it seems, had a sense of this, that the rain was not simply chaos falling from the sky, but something ordered, something weighed and measured by forces beyond human control. Let that settle softly in your mind. The rain, measured. The rivers, returning. The sea, patient and eternal, receiving and receiving again. Now drift a little further, out to the open ocean. For most of human history, the sea was something you could see and touch only at its surface. What lay beneath was mystery, dark and cold and unknowable. And yet the ocean is not still. Beneath its surface, vast rivers of water move through the deep, enormous, slow-moving currents that circle the globe, carrying warm water toward the poles and cold water toward the equator, regulating the climate of the entire planet. These are the ocean currents, and they are, in every meaningful sense, paths through the sea. Invisible roads, traced through water. The Psalms speak of the paths of the seas, a phrase that puzzled readers for centuries. What paths? The sea has no roads. It has no lanes or tracks. And yet, in the 19th century, a naval officer named Matthew Fontaine Maury, inspired, it is said, by this very phrase, dedicated his career to charting the ocean currents. He became the father of modern oceanography, mapping those invisible rivers that flow through the deep. The paths of the seas, it turned out, were real. They had simply been waiting to be found. And consider this. The ancient texts speak not only of the currents but of the depths themselves. The book of Job references the springs of the sea, and the Psalms speak of God laying the foundations of the earth in the deep. We now know that the ocean floor is not a flat, featureless plain. It is a landscape, mountains and plains and valleys, ridges and trenches and vast, dark chasms. The Mariana Trench in the Pacific plunges nearly 11 kilometers below the surface, deeper than Mount Everest is tall. These extraordinary valleys of the deep sea were entirely unknown to human eyes until the 20th century. And yet the ancient poets wrote of the valleys of the sea as though they knew, somehow, that the darkness beneath the water was not simply darkness, but terrain. Underground waters, too, found their way into the ancient record. There is a distinction made in the texts between the waters above, the rains, the clouds, the atmospheric moisture, and the waters below, the springs, the aquifers, the underground rivers that flow unseen through rock and soil. This distinction, which seems obvious to us now, was far from obvious in the ancient world. The idea that water moves beneath the ground, that vast reservoirs of fresh water are stored in the rock beneath our feet, was not a common understanding. And yet the ancient texts make this careful distinction: the waters above the earth, and the waters beneath it, as though someone had looked at the whole system from outside and seen how it all connected. Let your breathing slow now. In through the nose, out through the mouth, long and easy. You are resting inside a world that is more extraordinary than you perhaps remembered. And then there is lightning. The ancient texts speak of lightning with a kind of reverent awe, the fire of God, the brightness that splits the sky, the force that accompanies the storm. And we, who know something of what lightning is, the discharge of static electricity built up between cloud and earth, billions of volts released in a fraction of a second, heating the surrounding air to 5 times the temperature of the surface of the sun, we perhaps understand why. Lightning is one of the most powerful natural forces on Earth. It strikes the planet roughly 100 times every second. It was the subject of fascination long before Benjamin Franklin flew his famous kite into a storm and drew it down a wire. And the ancient writers felt its power, even without understanding its physics, knowing only that it was part of something vast and ordered, part of the ordinances of the heavens that governed the world. And consider this. Tucked quietly into the ancient records, there is a passage that has intrigued mathematicians and scholars for generations. In the description of a great circular basin built for Solomon's temple, measurements are given that imply a particular relationship between a circle's diameter and its circumference. The value implied is 3, a simple, round number. But some scholars have noted that there may be a subtle correction hidden in the precise spelling of the original Hebrew words, a tiny textual detail that, when applied, brings the implied value remarkably close to what we now call pi. Whether this represents an early mathematical insight or a beautiful coincidence, it is a reminder that the ancient world was not as simple or as ignorant as we sometimes assume. These were careful, observant, thoughtful people, and they were paying attention. Rest now in that thought. The image of ancient hands measuring a great bronze basin, working with numbers and ratios and the quiet satisfaction of geometry. And then let it go, like a breath released, and drift a little deeper. Because now we come to something even closer to home. Even more intimate. We leave the ocean and the sky and the stars, and we come to something that has been with you every moment of your life, something so familiar you rarely stop to think about it. We come to you, to the extraordinary, improbable, breathtaking fact of a human being. The ancient texts say that humanity was formed from the dust of the ground, from the earth itself. And for centuries, this was read as poetry, a metaphor for human frailty, human mortality, the humble origins of a creature made of clay. But modern biochemistry tells us that it is also, in a striking sense, literally true. The human body is made of elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, and dozens more. And every single one of those elements is found in the soil of the earth. We are, in the most precise chemical sense, made of earth. The same atoms that make up rock and river and soil and sky make up your bones, your blood, your breath. You are, quite literally, stardust that has learned to think. And consider this. One of the great questions of early biology was whether life could arise spontaneously from non-living matter. Could maggots appear from rotting meat? Could mice emerge from grain? For centuries, many people believed they could. That life generated itself from nothing, given the right conditions. But experiment after experiment eventually established what we now call the principle of biogenesis, the understanding that life comes only from life. Every living thing reproduces after its own kind. Dogs give birth to dogs. Fish produce fish. Apple trees grow from apple seeds. This is not a controversial idea now. It is the bedrock of biology. But it was written, quietly and clearly, thousands of years before Louis Pasteur ran his famous experiments. The ancient text says, again and again, that every living creature was made to reproduce according to its kind. According to its kind. Life, from life, producing life. Let that wash over you gently. The great chain of being, unbroken, stretching back to the very first morning of the world. Now let yourself imagine something. Or rather, let yourself remember something you have never actually seen, but which is true nonetheless. There was a time, not so long ago in the scale of things, when you did not exist. And then, in a moment of biological wonder, something began. A single cell, smaller than the full stop at the end of a sentence, carrying within it all the information needed to build an entire human being. And from that cell, over days and weeks, something grew. Something folded and divided and specialized and shaped itself in the warm dark. Ancient texts spoke of God knitting together a child in the womb, of bones being formed in secret, of the human frame being carefully and wonderfully made in the hidden depths. Modern embryology, with all its scanning technology and molecular biology, has only deepened our awe at what that process involves. The instructions encoded in a single strand of DNA, if written out, would fill thousands of books. The development of a human embryo, the timing of each fold, each division, each differentiation of cells into liver and heart and eye and hand, is a process of such intricate, orchestrated complexity that scientists are still mapping its details. Knitted together in secret. Wonderfully made. The language turns out to be not just beautiful, it turns out to be apt. And then there is blood. Of all the statements in the ancient medical texts, few are as striking as this one. The life of the flesh is in the blood. This was written at a time when the function of blood was entirely unknown, when many physicians believed that bloodletting was a cure, that removing blood from the body would restore health. And indeed, for thousands of years, bloodletting was one of the most common medical treatments in the world, often doing far more harm than good. George Washington, one of history's most famous patients, is believed by many historians to have been hastened to his death by aggressive bloodletting in his final illness. And yet, the ancient text had always said that life was in the blood, not something to be drained away, but something to be preserved. We now know that blood carries oxygen to every cell in the body, that it transports nutrients and hormones and immune cells, that it is, in the most literal sense, the medium through which life is sustained. The life of the flesh is, indeed, in the blood. And consider this. As we move toward the close of this part of our journey, there is one more quiet wonder to rest in. The ancient world was not without medicine. And the medicine of the ancient texts was, in many ways, remarkably gentle and observant. The book of Ezekiel describes trees whose leaves are for healing. The story of the Good Samaritan includes the use of oil and wine as wound treatments, both of which have genuine antimicrobial properties that modern science has confirmed. Ancient cultures used willow bark, which contains salicylic acid, the active component of aspirin, to relieve pain and fever. They used honey, which has powerful antibacterial qualities. They used aloe, and garlic, and turmeric, compounds from which entire branches of modern pharmacology have grown. The healing was in the plants. It had always been in the plants. And the ancient healers, watching and listening and learning from the world around them, had found it there, long before the chemistry was understood. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, carry this with you, the image of a world that was designed with extraordinary care. A world where the water moves in perfect cycles and the seas run in invisible paths. A world where lightning splits the sky in ordered bursts and the mathematics of circles was quietly understood long ago. A world where life comes only from life, where every creature reproduces its own kind, where a single cell contains libraries of instruction, where blood carries life to every hidden corner of the body, and where the green and growing things of the earth have always held the medicines we need. You are part of this world, made from it, sustained by it, woven into it. And tonight you can simply rest inside it, held gently by the same quiet order that holds the rain in its cycle and the stars in their courses and the blood moving warmly through your veins. Let your eyes close a little more. Let the weight of the world fall away. You are safe. You are still. And there is so much more wonder waiting, gently, for whenever you are ready to receive it. And still we rest here together, drifting softly on this quiet river of wonder. We have traveled far already tonight, from the very first moment of creation, through the expanding heavens and the hanging earth, down through the water cycle and the paths of the sea, into the hidden depths of the human body and the life that moves within the blood. And now, we come to something that feels perhaps a little more grounded, a little more human. Something that touches not the stars or the oceans, but the everyday life of people, how they lived, how they cared for one another, how they kept themselves and their communities safe. We come to medicine. Not the medicine of laboratories and microscopes. That world was still thousands of years away. But something older, and in many ways just as remarkable. A set of laws, written in the ancient Near East, at a time when the germ theory of disease had not even been imagined, when illness was thought to come from bad air, or evil spirits, or the displeasure of the gods. And yet, buried within these ancient laws, are instructions so precise, so hygienically sound, so thoroughly ahead of their time, that modern physicians and public health experts have looked at them with something approaching disbelief. Let your body settle a little deeper now. Let your shoulders soften. Let the quiet of the night hold you, as we walk gently through this extraordinary chapter of the story. Begin with something as simple as washing your hands. It is so ordinary to us now, so automatic, so basic, that it is almost impossible to imagine a world in which it was not understood. And yet for most of human history, it was not. The connection between unwashed hands and the spread of disease was entirely unknown until the 19th century, when a Hungarian physician named Ignaz Semmelweis noticed something troubling in the maternity ward where he worked. Women were dying of childbed fever at alarming rates, but only in the wards attended by doctors and medical students who came directly from performing autopsies. When he introduced a policy of hand-washing with a chlorinated solution before attending births, the death rate dropped dramatically. His colleagues largely rejected his findings. He was ridiculed, institutionalized, and died, tragically, of an infection. Only after his death did the medical world begin to accept what he had shown. And consider this. Thousands of years before Semmelweis, the ancient laws given to the people of Israel required regular washing of the hands and body. After contact with anything considered unclean, after touching a sick person, after handling certain materials, after any number of daily activities, the law required washing. Not a token rinse, but thorough cleansing with water. The principle was built into the fabric of daily life, repeated so often it became second nature. A culture of washing, encoded in religious law, millennia before anyone understood why it worked. It worked because microscopic organisms, bacteria, viruses, pathogens of every kind, are removed by washing. The law didn't explain this. It didn't need to. It simply required the washing, and the washing protected the people. And then there is the matter of waste. This may seem a prosaic subject for a sleep-time story, but it is, in truth, one of the most important chapters in the history of human health, and one of the most striking examples of ancient wisdom. The ancient laws given to the Israelites required that human waste be disposed of outside the camp, away from where people lived and ate and slept. There were specific instructions: carry a tool, go outside the boundary of the settlement, dig, and cover. It sounds simple. It sounds obvious. But for the vast majority of human civilizations throughout history, it was neither. Waste disposal was not a priority. Refuse accumulated in and around living spaces. Waterways were contaminated. And the result, over and over again throughout history, was disease, cholera, typhoid, dysentery, and 100 other illnesses that we now know travel primarily through contaminated water and waste. The Romans built sophisticated sewers. Medieval European cities, by contrast, were often places of extraordinary filth. Waste thrown from windows into the streets, disease spreading through crowded populations with devastating regularity. The Black Death of the 14th century killed perhaps a third of Europe's population, and while its primary cause was bubonic plague, its spread was dramatically worsened by the sanitary conditions of the time. And all the while, the ancient law had quietly preserved its instruction: take it outside, dig, cover, keep the living space clean. Modern public health, the science of keeping populations safe from disease, is built almost entirely on these same principles. Clean water, proper waste disposal, separation of the sick from the healthy. The ancient laws had it right, long before the science existed to explain why. And consider this: the ancient dietary laws, which have sometimes puzzled or amused modern readers, turn out to contain a quiet biological wisdom. The animals prohibited from consumption, certain birds, certain marine creatures, and particularly pigs, are, in many cases, animals that are more likely to carry parasites or pathogens harmful to humans. Pork, improperly handled or cooked, can carry trichinella, a parasitic worm that causes serious illness. Shellfish and bottom-feeding creatures can concentrate toxins and bacteria from their environments. The precise mechanisms were entirely unknown to the ancient lawgivers. But the effect of the laws was to steer people away from some of the most common sources of foodborne illness in the ancient world. The prohibition on eating blood, too, turns out to have a sound medical basis. Blood is not only the carrier of life, it is also the carrier of disease. Pathogens and parasites that live in the bloodstream of an animal remain present in its blood after death. Consuming blood is one of the more direct ways to transfer these organisms from animal to human. The ancient law simply said, do not eat blood. Life is in the blood. And so the blood was to be drained before meat was eaten, a practice that, in the process, removed much of what might otherwise cause harm. Let that wash over you gently. Laws that protected life, encoded in language about life. The same word pointing in two directions at once, toward the sacred and toward the safe. Drifting on now, there are the laws concerning dead animals, carcasses of creatures that had died of illness or natural causes, rather than being properly slaughtered and prepared. The ancient law was clear: do not touch them. And if you did, you were considered unclean until you had washed. An animal that has died of disease may carry any number of pathogens, bacteria, viruses, parasites, that remain active and dangerous long after the creature has died. The instruction to avoid such carcasses, and to wash thoroughly if contact was made, is precisely what a modern public health official would advise. Not because of any ritual consideration, but because of the very real biological risk. And consider this: when washing was required under these ancient laws, there was a specific preference for flowing water. Not still water from a basin or a bowl, but running water, water from a spring or a stream, water that moved. For centuries, this seemed like an arbitrary distinction. But we now understand that flowing water carries contaminants away from the point of washing. Still water in a basin, used multiple times for washing, becomes increasingly contaminated with each use. Running water dilutes and removes what is being washed off, carrying it away and replacing it with clean water continuously. The ancient preference for running water was not superstition. It was, unknowingly, a more effective approach to hygiene. And it was written into the law. Then there is fire. When materials were considered severely contaminated, clothing, leather, certain items that had been in contact with infectious disease, the ancient law did not say to wash them and reuse them. It said to burn them. Complete destruction of contaminated materials by fire is precisely what modern biohazard protocols prescribe for items that cannot be safely decontaminated. The burning of infected materials during plague outbreaks has been standard practice in public health emergencies for centuries, but the principle was already there in the ancient law, applied to the infectious diseases of its own time, long before anyone understood what a bacterium or a virus was. And finally, the laws surrounding death. When a person died, those who came into contact with the body were considered unclean for a period of days, and were required to remain separate from the community, wash thoroughly, and undergo a period of isolation before returning to normal life. To the ancient mind, this was a matter of ritual purity. To the modern epidemiologist, it is something else entirely. It is quarantine. The body of someone who has died of infectious disease can remain a source of contagion for a significant period after death. The people who handle the dead are at elevated risk of exposure, separating them from the community, requiring washing, and observing a waiting period before return. These are not primitive superstitions. These are sound infection control measures. And they were encoded in ancient law, followed by a desert people thousands of years before the first hospital, before the first microscope, before the first understanding of how disease moves from person to person. Let yourself rest in the quiet wonder of that. A people walking through a desert, following laws they did not fully understand, protected by a wisdom that would not be rediscovered for millennia. Washing their hands, disposing of their waste, avoiding contaminated food, burning what could not be cleaned, isolating those who had been near the dead, and in doing so, surviving, thriving, even in conditions that devastated other peoples around them. There is something deeply comforting in this, if you let it settle. The idea that care was taken, that the details of daily life were considered important enough to legislate, to preserve, to pass down through generations. That the same voice which spoke the stars into being also cared about whether the camp was clean, whether the water was flowing, whether the sick were protected and the healthy kept safe. You are cared for in ways you will never fully see or know. Just as those ancient people were kept safe by laws they did not fully understand, you are held and sustained by forces and systems and kindnesses that work quietly in the background of your life, asking nothing in return. Let that thought carry you now, softly and slowly, into the deeper waters of sleep. Your body is resting. Your breathing is slow. The night is quiet around you, and there is nothing to do but let go. Let go of the day. Let go of the thinking. Let go of the weight of knowing and understanding and figuring things out. And so we continue, drifting gently forward, carried along on this soft and steady current. The night is deep around you now, and your body knows what to do. It is already letting go, already sinking into the warmth and the quiet, already doing the gentle, ancient work of rest. You don't need to hold on to any of these words. They are simply here to accompany you, like the sound of rain on a roof, or wind moving through trees, something to rest beside, rather than something to grasp. We have been walking through a remarkable story. A story of ancient wisdom that reached further than it had any earthly reason to reach, describing the shape of the cosmos, the cycle of water, the path of ocean currents, the life that moves in blood, the healing that waits in plants, the protection found in washing and in fire and in the careful management of waste. And now, we come to perhaps the most extraordinary chapter of all. The chapter where these ancient laws reveal themselves to be nothing less than a complete, functioning public health system. Thousands of years before public health was a concept. Thousands of years before the existence of germs was even suspected. Settle a little deeper now. Let the weight of your body be held completely. There is nothing left to carry tonight. We begin with one of the most recognizable and most misunderstood elements of the ancient law: the protocols surrounding leprosy. To many modern readers, these passages seem strange, even harsh. Detailed instructions about examining skin conditions, declaring individuals clean or unclean, separating the sick from the community. But when you look at these laws through the lens of what we now know about infectious disease, something remarkable comes into focus. Leprosy, or, more accurately, the range of serious skin conditions that the ancient texts grouped under this term, is contagious. It spreads through prolonged close contact. In a community living in close quarters, sharing food, water, and living space, an uncontrolled outbreak of a serious skin disease could be devastating. The ancient law's response to this was not cruel. It was, in modern terms, a formal quarantine protocol. When someone developed suspicious symptoms, they were brought before a priest for examination. The affected area was inspected carefully. If the condition appeared serious, the individual was isolated, separated from the general community for a defined period, and then re-examined. If the condition had spread or worsened, isolation continued. If it had resolved, the person was declared clean and welcomed back. And consider this: the role of the priest in this system is one of the details that most surprises modern readers when they look at it carefully. The priest was not simply a religious figure performing a ritual. In the context of these laws, the priest was functioning as something very close to what we would today call a public health officer. He was trained to examine, to assess, to make determinations about risk, to prescribe isolation when necessary, and to authorize return to the community when the danger had passed. He was the interface between the individual and the public health of the whole group. This is, in structural terms, precisely how modern disease control works: trained inspectors, defined criteria, mandatory reporting, isolation orders, and clearance procedures before return to normal activity. The ancient community had all of this. It simply used different language to describe it. And what is perhaps equally striking is the compassion built into the system. Isolation was not permanent. It was not a sentence. It was a process, a temporary separation for the protection of everyone, including the person who was sick, who was kept safe from the complications that could arise from continued exposure to others while unwell. When healing came, when the examination showed that the condition had resolved, the person was welcomed back. There were ceremonies of restoration, rituals of reintegration. The community did not cast out its sick and forget them. It held a place for them, and brought them home when it was safe to do so. There is something deeply human in that, something worth resting in for a moment. The idea that even the most rigorous public health system left room for restoration, left the door open, kept the place warm. Drifting on now, to something that might seem, At first, an unlikely subject for ancient wisdom, the matter of mold. Of all the things one might expect an ancient religious text to address, the inspection and decontamination of houses for fungal growth is perhaps not at the top of the list. And yet, tucked into the same chapters that deal with skin conditions and quarantine protocols, there are detailed instructions for exactly this. If a greenish or reddish discoloration appeared in the walls of a house, the owner was to report it to a priest, who would come and inspect. If the spread appeared to be active, the house was to be vacated, emptied of its contents and closed up, for a period of observation. If the contamination had spread further at the end of that period, the affected stones were to be removed, taken outside the city, and the walls scraped and replastered. If the mold returned, the house was to be torn down entirely and the materials taken outside to a designated place of disposal. Modern building science and public health guidelines for toxic mold, particularly black mold, which can cause serious respiratory illness and other health problems, follow, in broad outline, almost exactly this same protocol. Identification, inspection, isolation of the affected space, removal of contaminated materials, and if the problem cannot be resolved, demolition. The principle that a contaminated building could make its occupants sick, and that the appropriate response was inspection, isolation, remediation, and if necessary destruction. This is not a modern insight. It is an ancient one, encoded in law, observed and followed for generations before anyone understood what mold actually was or how it affected the body. And consider this, the ancient protocols were not limited to individual cases of disease. They extended to the concept of community-wide contamination control. There were designated areas outside the camp or city for disposing of contaminated materials, waste, infected clothing, the rubble of demolished houses. There were rules about what could be touched and what must be avoided. There was, in essence, a spatial logic to the whole system, a recognition that disease and contamination needed to be physically separated from the living community, pushed to the margins, disposed of at a distance. This is the logic of the isolation ward, of the hazardous waste facility, of the quarantine station, and it was operating in the desert, among a traveling community, 3,000 years ago. The matter of water appears again here too, specifically, the distinction between safe and unsafe water. The ancient laws expressed a clear preference for living water, flowing, moving, fresh, over stagnant water. Pools and pits and standing water were regarded with suspicion, associated with uncleanness. And this, too, turns out to be biologically sound. Stagnant water is a breeding ground for bacteria, for mosquito larvae, for the organisms that cause cholera and typhoid and malaria and a dozen other waterborne diseases. Moving water, water from springs and streams and rivers, is generally far safer. The ancient instinct to prefer it was not arbitrary. It was, whether understood or not, a preference for the water less likely to kill you. Let that image drift through your mind gently. Clear water, moving, cold and clean. The sound of a stream in the dark. Let it carry you a little further toward sleep. Now, we come to laws that are sometimes dismissed or misread by modern audiences, but which contain, on closer inspection, a quiet and careful concern for human health. The ancient laws around menstruation and the period following childbirth, the postpartum period, are often read as stigmatizing or restrictive. But there is another way to see them. In the ancient world, childbirth was extraordinarily dangerous. Infection was the leading cause of maternal death, and remains so in parts of the world where modern obstetric care is unavailable. The postpartum period, the weeks immediately following birth, is a time of particular vulnerability. The body is recovering from an enormous physical event. The immune system is adjusting. The risk of infection is elevated. The ancient laws prescribed a period of rest and separation for the mother following childbirth. A period during which she was not required to resume normal social and domestic activity. During which, in effect, she was given time to recover. Similarly, the laws around menstruation prescribed a period of rest and reduced contact. Whether or not this was the intention, the effect was to give the body time, a rhythm of rest built into the social structure, protected by religious law, generation after generation. And the restriction on resuming sexual relations during these vulnerable periods served an additional protective function, reducing the risk of infection at precisely the times when the body was most susceptible. And consider this: the ancient sexual laws more broadly had a significant effect on the spread of sexually transmitted disease. Fidelity within marriage, restrictions on practices associated with higher transmission risk, clear guidelines about separation during illness. Taken together, these laws dramatically reduced the pathways along which infectious disease could travel through a community. This was not their stated purpose. Their stated purpose was moral and spiritual. But the epidemiological effect was real, measurable, and significant. A community following these laws would have had substantially lower rates of sexually transmitted infection than neighboring communities that did not. Which brings us, gently, to a historical note that is perhaps the most striking of all. During the Great Plague outbreaks of medieval Europe, particularly the Black Death of the 14th century, which swept through the continent with almost unimaginable speed and ferocity, it was observed by contemporaries that Jewish communities seemed, in many places, to suffer lower mortality rates than their neighbors. This observation was, tragically, sometimes used to fuel anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, accusations that Jews had somehow caused the plague, precisely because they seemed less affected by it. The real explanation, which historians and epidemiologists have since examined carefully, is far simpler and far more extraordinary. Jewish communities of the medieval period were, by and large, following the ancient laws. They were washing regularly. They were disposing of waste carefully. They were observing dietary restrictions that reduced contact with contaminated food. They were following sexual laws that reduced transmission pathways. They were isolating the sick. They were avoiding contact with the dead. They were doing, in other words, everything that modern public health would have prescribed, not because they understood germ theory, but because they were following a code of law that had been given to them thousands of years earlier, and which had been quietly protecting them ever since. The ancient laws were not merely religious observances. They were, in the deepest and most practical sense, a system for keeping human beings alive. Let that settle over you now, like a warm and quiet blanket. The idea that care was taken, not just for the great and dramatic moments of human history, but for the ordinary, daily, unglamorous details of how a community lives together. The washing, the water, the food, the rest after illness. The door left open for the restored. You are resting in a world where the details have always mattered. Where the small things, the clean hands, the flowing water, the careful distance kept between the sick and the well, have always been part of a larger care. A care that reaches further than any of us can fully see. Your breathing is slow now. Your body is still. The thinking mind is growing quiet. The thoughts softer and less distinct, like shapes seen through frosted glass. Let them go. Let them drift. There is nothing to hold on to tonight, and nothing to figure out. Only rest. Only the deep, restorative, ancient gift of sleep. And still we drift, you and I, through this long and gentle night. The world outside is quiet. The stars are doing what they have always done, burning steadily, unhurried, indifferent to clocks and schedules and the busy machinery of daylight. And here, in this soft and in-between place, we continue our journey through one of the most quietly astonishing stories ever told. The story of wisdom that arrived before its time. Of knowledge written into ancient lore that would not be rediscovered for thousands of years. Of a care for human life that extended all the way down, from the architecture of the cosmos to the rhythm of the working week. And it is the rhythm of the week that we come to now. Rest. True, deep, deliberate rest. Not the collapse of exhaustion, Not the brief unconsciousness between one day's work and the next, but something chosen. Something protected. Something considered important enough to be written into law and observed as a sacred practice, generation after generation, for thousands of years. The ancient law prescribed one day in 7 as a day of rest. The Sabbath, from a Hebrew word meaning simply to stop, to cease, to rest. On this day, no ordinary work was to be done. The fields lay still. The tools were set aside. The fires of industry were not lit. And the people, all of them, including the servants, including the animals, were given the gift of a day without labor. For centuries, this was understood in purely religious terms, a day set apart for worship, for remembrance, for the acknowledgement that the world did not belong to the people who worked it. And it is all of those things. But modern medicine and neuroscience have added another layer of understanding that makes the ancient law even more remarkable. The human body and mind are not designed for continuous, uninterrupted work. We know this now with great precision. The stress hormone cortisol, which the body produces in response to demands and pressures, needs periods of low demand to return to healthy baseline levels. Chronic elevation of cortisol, chronic stress, without recovery, is associated with a vast range of physical and mental health problems: cardiovascular disease, immune suppression, anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, poor sleep, and inflammation throughout the body. The brain, similarly, requires periods of disengagement, not just sleep at night, but genuine downtime during waking hours, to consolidate learning, to process emotion, to restore its capacity for attention and creativity. And consider this: one day in 7. That is the rhythm the ancient law prescribed. And it turns out to be, as far as we can tell, a remarkably well-calibrated interval. Long enough that the full benefit of rest is achieved. Short enough that productivity and purpose are maintained. 7 days has been the working unit of human social organization for so long that it can seem simply natural. But it is not universal in nature, and many societies have experimented with different cycles. The French revolutionary calendar tried a 10-day week. The Soviet Union tried 5- and 6-day cycles. Neither produced the results hoped for, and both were eventually abandoned. The 7-day week, with its built-in day of rest, persists across cultures, across religions, across millennia. And the body, it turns out, thrives on it. Let your own body rest now, as it was designed to do. Let the week's work dissolve. Let the to-do lists and the unfinished things drift to the far edges of your awareness, and then beyond them, into the dark, where they can wait until morning. And consider this: the principle of rest in the ancient law extended beyond the individual. It extended to the land itself. Every 7th year, the law prescribed that agricultural fields were to lie fallow, unplanted, unharvested, allowed to rest. This was not simply a spiritual gesture. It is, in precise agricultural terms, the practice of crop rotation and soil recovery, one of the most important principles of sustainable farming. Soil that is cultivated continuously without rest becomes depleted of nutrients. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and other elements essential for plant growth are stripped from the soil faster than they can be naturally replenished. The result is degraded land, shrinking harvests, and eventually the collapse of agricultural productivity. The ancient law built the solution into its structure. Rest the land. Let it recover. Let the natural processes of decomposition and nitrogen fixing and microbial activity restore what the crops have taken. Modern sustainable agriculture, with all its scientific understanding of soil chemistry and microbiology, arrives at the same prescription: periodic fallow, rotation, rest. The land, like the body, was not designed for uninterrupted demand. There is a gentleness in this that is easy to overlook. A recognition that the world has limits. That rest is not laziness, not waste, not a failure of productivity, but a necessary part of the rhythm of health. for people, and for the ground beneath their feet. Now, drifting onto something warmer, something that touches the interior life, the life of feeling and meaning and the invisible weather of the heart. The ancient text of Proverbs contains a line that reads almost like a medical observation. A merry heart does good like medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. It is easy to read this as poetry and move on. But modern psychosomatic medicine, the study of the relationship between mental and emotional states and physical health, has spent decades accumulating evidence that this ancient observation is, in the most literal sense, accurate. Joy, genuine positive emotion, the sense that life is good and meaningful and worth living, has measurable effects on the body. People who report higher levels of positive emotion have stronger immune function, lower levels of systemic inflammation, better cardiovascular health, faster wound healing, and longer lives. The mechanisms are complex and still being mapped, but they involve the same hormones and neurotransmitters and immune pathways that are disrupted by chronic stress. Joy is not merely pleasant. It is physiologically beneficial. A merry heart does good like medicine. And the broken spirit that dries the bones, this too has a physical correlate. Chronic grief, depression, and hopelessness are associated with reduced bone density, suppressed immune function, increased inflammation, and elevated risk of a wide range of physical illnesses. The bones, metaphorically and somewhat literally, are affected by the state of the spirit. The ancient writer captured in a single sentence what entire textbooks of psychoneuroimmunology now work to explain in detail. Let yourself feel, if you can, the small warmth of that, the sense that this night, this rest, this gentle journey through wonder, is doing you good. Not just the sleep that is coming, but the quiet contentment of lying here, safe and still, in the company of beautiful things. And consider this. There is a remarkable story embedded in the ancient record that reads, to a modern nutritionist, like a controlled dietary experiment. A young man named Daniel, carried as a captive to the court of Babylon, was offered the rich food and wine of the royal table, the diet of the powerful, the privileged, the well-fed elite of the ancient world. He declined. He asked instead for vegetables and water, a simple, plant-based diet. His minders were nervous. They feared he would become weak, pale, unimpressive compared to the other young men eating from the king's table. But Daniel and his companions agreed to a trial. 10 days on the plant-based diet, then an assessment. At the end of 10 days, they appeared healthier and better nourished than all the young men who had been eating the royal food. Modern nutritional science has spent considerable energy establishing what Daniel's simple experiment suggested thousands of years ago, that a diet rich in plants, in vegetables and legumes and whole foods, supports health in ways that diets heavy in rich meat and refined foods often do not. The longest-lived populations on Earth today, the so-called blue zones, studied extensively by demographers and nutritionists, tend to eat diets that are predominantly plant-based. Daniel's 10-day trial was not a peer-reviewed study, but it points, with quiet confidence, in the direction that modern nutritional research has broadly confirmed. And then there is wine. Or more specifically, the ancient, pragmatic, remarkably well-observed use of wine as medicine. The Apostle Paul, writing to his younger colleague Timothy, offers what is perhaps the earliest recorded medical recommendation for moderate wine consumption. Use a little wine for your stomach's sake and your frequent infirmities. This is not a celebration of drinking. It is a prescription, a specific, measured recommendation for a specific health purpose. And it turns out to be sound. Wine, particularly in small quantities, has genuine antimicrobial properties. In the ancient world, where clean water was not always available, a small amount of wine mixed with water could render the drink significantly safer. The alcohol and organic acids inhibiting the growth of bacteria that might otherwise cause illness. The use of wine as a digestive aid also has a basis in modern understanding. Certain compounds in wine stimulate gastric acid production and support digestive function. And the polyphenols in red wine, including resveratrol, have been the subject of extensive modern research for their potential cardiovascular and anti-inflammatory effects. A little wine, for the stomach's sake. Written in the 1st century, still discussed in cardiology journals today. And oil. The pairing of oil and wine for wound care, mentioned in the story of the Good Samaritan, who poured oil and wine into the wounds of the man he found by the road, is not merely symbolic. Olive oil has genuine wound healing properties. It is moisturizing, anti-inflammatory, and creates a protective barrier over damaged skin. Wine, as we have noted, has antimicrobial properties. Together, they form a surprisingly effective ancient first aid treatment, the oil soothing and protecting, the wine cleaning and inhibiting infection. Modern research has confirmed the wound healing properties of olive oil compounds. The Good Samaritan, it turns out, was not only compassionate, he was medically competent. Rest with that image for a moment. The gentle, careful pouring of oil and wine. The hands that tend the wound. The road, quiet now, and safe. And so we come, softly and inevitably, to the place where the road turns. Where the story changes its nature. Where we step across a threshold from the natural to the supernatural, from the observed to the promised, from the wisdom that can be explained to the wonder that cannot. Everything we have traveled through tonight, the water cycle, the ocean currents, the hygiene laws, the quarantine protocols, the Sabbath rest, the healing plants, the medicinal oil, all of it has been, in some sense, natural wisdom. Wisdom about how the world works, encoded in ancient texts before the tools existed to verify it. Remarkable, yes. Astonishing, even. But operating within the framework of cause and effect, of biology and chemistry and physics, of the ordinary laws that govern ordinary life. But the ancient texts do not stop there. Because woven through all of this practical, verifiable, ahead of its time wisdom is something else entirely. A promise. A claim that moves beyond what can be measured or explained or reproduced in a laboratory. The ancient law, after laying out all its careful instructions for health and hygiene and rest and diet, makes an extraordinary statement. It says, in essence, if you follow these ways, if you walk in this path, then the diseases that have struck the nations around you will not come upon you. Fewer illnesses. Fewer plagues. A quality of health that goes beyond what the instructions alone can account for. And consider this. Historians who have studied the health records of ancient Israel, and later of Jewish communities through the medieval period and beyond, have noted something that is difficult to explain purely in terms of hygiene. The longevity. The relative resilience in times of plague. The patterns of disease that differ, in meaningful ways, from surrounding populations. Some of this can be accounted for by the washing, the food laws, the sanitation, the quarantine protocols. But some of it seems to exceed what those measures alone would predict. There is a margin that the science does not quite reach. And then there is healing itself. Not the healing of rest or plants or clean water, but the healing that the ancient texts describe as something given, something received, something that arrives from outside the system of natural cause and effect. The blind who see. The lame who walk. The leper declared clean not by the slow resolution of disease but in a moment, completely, irreversibly. The dead who are raised. These stories do not ask to be understood. They do not fit into the framework of biology and chemistry that the rest of our journey tonight has been built on. They stand apart from it, not contradicting it, but exceeding it, pointing to something that the natural world, extraordinary as it is, cannot fully contain. Faith, the ancient texts suggest, is not merely a comfort or a consolation. It is a conduit, something through which healing, real, physical, embodied healing, can move. The connection between faith and healing has been studied by modern medicine with considerable interest and considerable humility. The placebo effect, the genuine, measurable improvement in physical conditions that can be produced by belief alone, hints at the edges of something that medicine does not fully understand. Studies of prayer and healing have produced results that are difficult to interpret but impossible to simply dismiss. The relationship between the interior life, belief, hope, trust, surrender, and the health of the body is real, and it is deeper than current science can map. But the ancient texts are not talking about the placebo effect. They are talking about something more. Something that breaks the rules rather than working subtly within them. Something that arrives not as a gradual improvement but as a sudden, complete, inexplicable restoration. We will spend the rest of our time together tonight in the company of those stories. The miraculous ones, the ones that cannot be explained, only received. The ones that ask not for understanding but for wonder. But for now, let this transition carry you gently. Let the solid ground of natural wisdom give way, slowly and without alarm, to something wider, something deeper. Let the explanations fall away, like the last thoughts before sleep, and let what remains be simply this: the sense that the world is more than it appears. That what can be measured is only a fraction of what is real. That care has been taken, is being taken, in ways that go far beyond what any science has yet found the instruments to detect. You are drifting now. The thinking is softer. The night is fuller and quieter and deeper than it was an hour ago. Let yourself go into it, into the dark, into the rest, into the mystery that holds you as surely as gravity, and with far more tenderness. And here we are, still together, still drifting, still carried gently on this long and quiet river of wonder. The night has deepened around you now, and your body has grown heavier and warmer, settled into the place where waking and sleeping begin to blur at the edges, where thoughts come slowly and dissolve before they are fully formed, like breath on cold air. We have come a long way together tonight. We began at the very first moment of everything, the singular, astonishing instant when time and space and light came into being from nothing. We have walked through the water cycle and the ocean currents, through the hygiene laws of the ancient desert, through the careful quarantine protocols and the medicinal wisdom of oil and wine and plants. We have stood at the threshold between the natural and the supernatural, between what can be explained and what can only be received. And now we step through. We have been building, all this time, toward something. Toward a series of stories that do not fit into the frameworks of biology or chemistry or physics. Stories that do not ask to be analyzed. Stories that ask only one thing of us: to be still, and to listen, and to let the wonder of them move through us like water through open hands. These are the stories of healing. Not the healing of rest, or of clean water, or of medicinal plants, but healing of another kind entirely. Sudden, complete, unexplained by any natural mechanism then or now. Healing that arrived not gradually, not partially, not with the caveat of further treatment, but in a moment. Whole. Done. As though the illness had never been. Let yourself go a little softer now. There is nothing to prove or disprove tonight. Nothing to argue or defend. Only stories to rest beside, and let wash over you, and carry you down into sleep. We begin with leprosy. We have spoken of leprosy already tonight, of the ancient quarantine protocols that surrounded it, of the isolation and the inspection and the slow, careful process of declaring someone clean. It was one of the most feared diagnoses in the ancient world, and with good reason. There was no cure. The disease progressed slowly and mercilessly, damaging nerves, disfiguring skin and bone, eventually taking fingers and toes and the feeling in the extremities. The leper was separated from community, from family, from the ordinary warmth of human contact, sometimes for the rest of their life. The word clean, in this context, was one of the most longed-for words in any language. There is a moment in the ancient record when a man with leprosy comes to Jesus. He does not wait to be noticed. He approaches directly, which, by the law, he was not supposed to do. And he says something remarkable. Not can you heal me, not will you heal me, but, if you are willing, you can make me clean. There is a humility in that word willing, an acknowledgement that the power is real, that its exercise is not in question, but that grace cannot be demanded, only asked for. And the response that comes is equally remarkable for what it includes. Jesus reaches out his hand. In a world where lepers were untouched, where physical contact was forbidden, where isolation was enforced precisely to prevent the kind of closeness that human beings need in order to feel fully human, and he touches him. Before saying a word of healing, he touches him. And then he says, I am willing. Be clean. And immediately, the leprosy is gone. Let that image rest in you for a moment. The touch before the healing. The restoration of human contact before the restoration of skin and nerve. As if the loneliness were understood to be as much a wound as the disease itself. And consider this. Leprosy, in its advanced forms, is not a condition that resolves quickly even with modern antibiotic treatment. The nerve damage is often permanent. The disfigurement does not reverse. Modern medicine can halt the progression of leprosy, and for that we are grateful. But it cannot restore what has already been lost. The ancient record describes not a halting of the disease but a complete reversal of it, instantaneous, total, leaving no trace. This is not a description of natural remission. It is a description of something else entirely. We drift on, into the story of a soldier's servant. A Roman centurion, a military officer, a man of considerable authority and power, a man accustomed to giving orders and having them obeyed, comes to Jesus on behalf of his servant, who is lying at home paralyzed and in great suffering. And the centurion says something that stops the story in its tracks. Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof. Only say the word, and my servant will be healed. He uses, as his explanatory model, the chain of military command. I say to one man, go, and he goes. I say to another, come, and he comes. Say the word, and it will be done. What is being described here is remote healing. The application of healing power at a distance, without physical presence, without touch, without the proximity that every natural model of medicine requires. And Jesus, we are told, marvels at this. The only recorded instance in the Gospels of Jesus being described as marveling. He says he has not found such faith in all of Israel. And he says, go. It shall be done as you have believed. And the servant is healed in that same hour. Modern medicine requires the body to be present. The physician must examine, must touch, must observe. Even our most advanced remote diagnostic tools, telemedicine, imaging, remote monitoring, require the patient to be connected to instruments, to technology, to something physical that bridges the distance. The healing described here required none of that. Only words, spoken at a distance, received by a faith that did not require explanation. Let your mind rest on that image. The centurion walking home, not knowing yet, only trusting, and finding, when he arrives, that the trust was well placed. We come now to a fever. Peter's mother-in-law is described as lying in bed with a high fever. Jesus comes to her, takes her hand, and the fever leaves her immediately. She rises and begins to serve them. This is one of the simplest of the healing accounts. No great crowd, no elaborate approach, no dramatic scene. Just a feverish woman and a touch and an immediate return to health and strength. The ordinariness of it is, in its own way, as striking as the miracle itself. The power at work here is not reserved for dramatic public moments. It moves in quiet rooms, beside a sick woman's bed, with a simplicity that a parent tending a sick child might recognize. And consider this. Fever is one of the oldest and most universal human experiences of illness. It is the body's response to infection, a raising of internal temperature to make the environment less hospitable to pathogens, an activation of immune processes, a whole-body declaration that something is wrong and the body is fighting. It resolves naturally in time, or with medication that reduces temperature. But the resolution described here is neither natural nor pharmaceutical. It is complete, immediate, and followed not by the weakness and exhaustion that typically follow a fever, but by the energy to get up and begin working. The fever did not merely break. It was simply gone, drifting on now, to a hand. A man comes to a place of worship on a Sabbath day, and he has a withered hand, a hand that has lost its function, its muscle, its mobility. Whether through injury or illness or a congenital condition, the hand cannot do what hands are meant to do. And Jesus asks him to stretch it out. An instruction that, to anyone watching, would have seemed either cruel or absurd. A withered hand cannot be stretched out. That is, by definition, what it means to have a withered hand. But the man stretches it out. And as he does, it is restored, whole, like the other one. The atrophied muscle, the contracted tendons, the damaged nerves, whatever the underlying cause of the withering, reversed in the act of obedience. In the moment of doing the impossible thing. There is something in that image worth resting in. The healing arriving not before the attempt, but in the attempt. The stretch preceding the restoration. As though the act of reaching, in trust, toward what seemed impossible, was itself part of the miracle. And now, sight. There is a man born blind. Not blinded by injury or disease in the course of his life, but blind from birth. His visual cortex has never processed light. His optic nerves have never carried signals from a functioning eye to a brain equipped to interpret them. This is not a restoration of something lost. This would require, in neurological terms, the creation of something that never existed, the development of visual processing pathways in a brain that grew without them. Jesus heals him. The man goes, washes as instructed, and comes back seeing. And the response of the community around him is, in some ways, the most humanly believable part of the whole account. They don't believe it is the same man. They argue about it. His neighbors say, "Is this not the one who used to sit and beg?" Some say yes. Others say no. He only looks like him. And the man himself has to keep insisting, "I am the one." The miracle is so far outside what is expected, what is possible, what the framework of daily experience can accommodate, that people prefer to believe they are looking at a different person rather than accept what is in front of them. And consider this. When the religious authorities interrogate the healed man, pressing him to explain how this happened, he gives one of the most quietly magnificent answers in any ancient text. Whether he is a sinner I do not know. One thing I know, I was blind, and now I see. He does not defend a theology. He does not argue a metaphysics. He only reports what is true of his own experience. I was blind. Now I see. Whatever framework you use to make sense of that, or fail to make sense of it, that is what happened. We drift now to a voice that was not there. A man who cannot speak is brought to Jesus, and after the cause of the silence is addressed, the man speaks. The crowd's response is wonder. Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel. The gift of speech, of communication, of the ability to give voice to the interior life, to say one's own name aloud, restored to someone who had lived without it. Let yourself feel, for a moment, the weight of that gift. The first sound of your own voice, heard for the first time. The ability to call out, to answer, to sing. And now, a woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. 12 years of a chronic hemorrhage that has not responded to any treatment. She has spent everything she had on physicians. She has grown worse, not better. She is, in the way that chronic illness so often makes people feel, exhausted not only physically but in the deeper places, exhausted in hope, in the energy required to keep believing that things might improve. She does not ask to be healed. She does not present herself, does not make her case, does not wait to be seen. She moves through the crowd and touches the edge of Jesus' garment, the smallest possible contact, the most anonymous approach, and immediately, the bleeding stops. And Jesus turns. He felt power go out from him. "Who touched me?" he asks. The disciples look at him with the mild exasperation of people managing a crowd. The whole crowd is pressing against you, and you ask who touched you? But he turns, and he looks, and the woman comes forward, frightened, trembling, expecting to be rebuked for her presumption. And instead she is met with this: "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, and be healed of your disease." Daughter, not woman, not you there, not even her name, but daughter. A word of belonging, of relation, of being known and claimed, not despite the 12 years of suffering and the desperation that drove her into that crowd, but through it. Let that word rest in you. Daughter, son, the name that claims you in your most desperate reaching. We move now to a man with dropsy, what we would today call edema, or fluid retention. The abnormal accumulation of fluid in the tissues, causing swelling, discomfort, difficulty moving. It is a symptom of any number of underlying conditions: heart failure, kidney disease, liver disease, conditions which, in the ancient world, had no effective treatment. Jesus heals him. Quietly, without fanfare, at a dinner table, before a gathering of people watching to see what he will do. And then, a woman who has been bent double for 18 years. A spinal deformity, described as a spirit of infirmity, that has left her unable to straighten up, unable to stand fully upright, looking always down at the ground. 18 years of seeing the world from below, of the particular diminishment that comes with a body that cannot hold itself up. Jesus sees her across the room. He calls her to him. He places his hands on her. And immediately she straightens up and begins praising God. The crowd is delighted. The religious authorities are indignant. It is the Sabbath, and healing, they argue, is work. And Jesus answers them with a patience that is itself extraordinary. Ought not this daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day? 18 years. Seen, in a moment, by someone who knew exactly what they were looking at. Not just a bent spine but a bound life, a long captivity, a daughter who deserved to stand upright. And consider this. The healing ministry described in the ancient record was not only individual. The Gospels describe, at multiple points, Jesus healing crowds of sick people. Not one, not two, not a select few, but crowds. People who had come from all over, carrying their sick on mats, lowering them through roofs, pressing in from every side. The blind, the lame, the mute, the paralyzed, the leprous, the diseased, brought, in their hundreds, and healed. Matthew's Gospel describes the scene. He went throughout all Galilee, teaching in the synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every affliction among the people. Not most, not many, every disease, every affliction, among the people. The sheer scale of it is as striking as the individual stories. This was not a rare or occasional occurrence, something that happened once or twice under special circumstances. It was a consistent, repeated, documented pattern. Wherever he went, the sick were healed. Now let your mind settle on the scene. A pool of water, in Jerusalem, called Bethesda. Around the pool lie a great number of people who are ill, blind, lame, paralyzed. And among them, one man who has been an invalid for 38 years. 38 years. More than most people's working lives. More than most marriages. A span of time so long that the illness has become the primary fact of a person's existence, the organizing principle around which everything else is arranged. Jesus sees him there. He knows how long he has been waiting. And he asks him a question that sounds, at first, almost unkind. Do you want to be healed? But the question is not unkind. It is penetrating. Because healing would mean change, the end of one life and the beginning of another, completely unfamiliar one. It would mean leaving behind the identity built around the illness, the relationship structured around the need for care, the known routines of a life defined by limitation. Do you want to be healed? It is worth asking. Not because the healing might not be desired, but because desire must be active, not merely passive. Must be named. The man's answer is not quite yes. It is an explanation of why healing has not come. There is no one to help him into the pool when the water is stirred. He has been trying and failing by the means available to him. And Jesus does not engage with the explanation. He simply says, "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." And the man rises, and takes up his bed, and walks. 38 years of disability ended in a sentence. And finally, something that stands apart from all the others by virtue of its sheer, almost bewildering immediacy. In the garden, in the darkness, in the moment of arrest, one of those with Jesus draws a sword and cuts off the ear of a servant of the high priest. His name, we are told in one account, was Malchus. The chaos of the moment is palpable. The crowd, the torches, the weapons, the fear, the confusion, the sudden violence. And in the middle of all of it, Jesus reaches out and touches the man's ear, the severed ear, and heals it. This is perhaps the most medically precise of all the healing accounts. A specific, identifiable, irreversible injury, the surgical removal of a body part, reversed completely, instantaneously, in the middle of a crowd and a crisis. Not a healing of illness or disease or deformity, but the restoration of tissue that had been physically separated from the body. Modern surgery can, in some circumstances, reattach severed body parts. It requires a surgical team, specialized equipment, careful microsurgical technique, and is most likely to succeed when performed within a limited window of time after the injury. What is described in this account requires none of that. Only a hand reached out in a garden, in the dark, in the middle of everything falling apart. And that, perhaps, is the detail that stays longest. That in the moment of his own arrest, in the night that would lead to his own suffering and death, the first act is one of healing. For someone on the other side, for someone who had come to take him away, the ear of an enemy, restored. The violence of a friend, repaired. In the dark, in the chaos, in the last free moment before everything changed, a healing. Let that settle over you now, like the last breath before sleep. Not as something to understand, or explain, or argue about. Only as something to rest beside. Something warm and gentle and very old, that has been waiting here in the quiet, for exactly this moment in the night. You have traveled far tonight. From the first light of creation to the darkness of a garden. From the laws of physics to the touch that restored a severed ear. From the elegant cycle of water to the face of a woman who was called daughter by someone who saw her in a crowd. And now there is nothing left to do but sleep. Your body knows how. It has always known how. The breath comes and goes without asking. The heart beats without being told. The blood moves, warm and faithful, through every hidden channel of the body that was wonderfully made. You are held. You are seen. You are safe. Let the night do its work now. Let the rest be deep and full and restoring. And know that the wonder continues, that there are more stories waiting, more marvels gently patient on the other side of morning. But for now, for this hour, for this long and quiet and beautiful night, there is only this. And still the night holds you. Still you drift, warm and heavy and beautifully still, on this long, slow river of wonder that has carried you so far already. The stories we have rested in tonight have moved from the architecture of the cosmos to the touch of a hand in a garden. From the laws that govern water and soil and blood, to the moment a woman reached through a crowd and was called daughter. From the hygiene codes of the ancient desert to the severed ear restored in the dark. And now we go further still. Further than healing. Further than the restoration of what illness or injury has taken. We come now to the stories that press against the very edges of what the universe is understood to be. Stories that do not merely work within the laws of nature, or even exceed them in isolated moments, but that seem to address nature itself. To speak to it, as one might speak to a person, and have it listen. Let your body be completely still now. Let the breath come and go on its own, without any effort from you at all. You are already more asleep than awake, and that is exactly as it should be. These words are only here to accompany you, like starlight, present, gentle, requiring nothing. We begin on a lake. The Sea of Galilee is not an ocean. By the measure of the world's great bodies of water, it is modest, roughly 20 kilometers long, 13 kilometers wide, sitting in a bowl of hills in the north of Israel. But it is deceptive. The surrounding topography channels wind with particular ferocity, and storms on the Sea of Galilee can develop with extraordinary speed. Calm water turning to dangerous chop in what feels like moments, waves building in the shallow basin into something genuinely threatening. The disciples were experienced fishermen. Several of them had worked on this lake for years. They knew its moods, its patterns, its dangers. When they were frightened by a storm, it was not the alarm of landlocked men unaccustomed to water. It was the alarm of professionals who knew what they were looking at, and what they were looking at was serious. Jesus was asleep in the boat. Asleep, in a storm that was filling the hull with water, that had professional sailors afraid for their lives. There is something almost ordinary in that detail, the sleep of someone who is genuinely, deeply tired. And something almost unbearable about it, from the disciples' perspective. How can you sleep? Do you not care? We are going to die. And he wakes. And he does something that no account of human behavior, in any literature, in any tradition, describes any other person doing. He speaks to the storm. He addresses the wind and the water directly, the way you might address a person who is being unreasonable. Peace. Be still. And the wind stops. And the water becomes completely calm. Not gradually, not over the course of the next hour as the system moves through, but immediately. A great calm. The kind of calm that requires the cessation of wind-driven waves, which, in ordinary physical terms, take time to settle even after the wind drops. The calm described here is the calm of water that was never disturbed. Complete. Immediate. Like a word of authority spoken and instantly obeyed. The disciples' response is not relief, which is what you might expect. It is a new and different fear. They say to one another, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" The storm had frightened them as experienced sailors. What they were witnessing now frightened them as human beings confronting something that did not fit any category they possessed. And consider this. The question they ask is not how did he do that? It is who is this? They understood intuitively that the relevant question was not one of technique or mechanism. It was one of identity. What kind of being speaks to weather and is obeyed? Let that question drift through you softly, without demand. Who is this? Let it settle, unanswered, into the quiet. We drift on now, to the same lake. A different night, or perhaps the same night, seen from a different angle. The disciples are crossing the water without Jesus, who has stayed behind alone on the hillside. The wind is against them. They are straining at the oars, making slow progress in the dark, in the early hours of the morning. And then they see something that causes them to cry out in terror. A figure, moving across the surface of the water toward them. Walking on water. This is perhaps the most immediately impossible of all the accounts. Not because it involves power or healing or authority over natural forces, but because it so directly contradicts the most basic and universal human experience of what water is and what it does. Water does not support human weight. This is not a philosophical position. It is a fact so obvious, so constantly verified by experience, that it does not even rise to the level of conscious belief. It is simply the world. And yet here is a figure, walking on it. Jesus identifies himself. It is I. Do not be afraid. And then something happens that is easy to overlook in the astonishment of the larger miracle. Peter, impulsive, ardent Peter, calls out from the boat, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus says, "Come." And Peter gets out of the boat and walks on the water. For a moment, a brief, extraordinary, completely impossible moment. A human being, a fisherman, a man with calloused hands and a history of impulsive decisions, walks on the surface of a lake. And then he notices the wind. And he becomes afraid. And he begins to sink. And he cries out, "Lord, save me." And immediately, a hand reaches out and catches him. There is something in this account that is almost more remarkable than the walking itself. The catching. The immediacy of it. The hand that was there before the sinking was complete, before the water closed over his head, before the fear had fully taken hold. The cry, and the hand, separated by no meaningful interval, as though the reaching down had already begun before the calling out. And then they are in the boat. And the wind stops. And the disciples worship. And they say something they have not said before. "Truly you are the Son of God." Rest in that image for a moment. The hand in the dark water. The immediate catch. The wind, stilled again. And a fisherman, standing in a boat, soaking wet, alive, unable to fully account for what just happened to him. We come now to a stranger and more unsettling account. The story of the man among the tombs, and the pigs. A man is living in the tombs, the burial caves cut into the rock hillside, in a region called the Gerasenes. He is described as having an unclean spirit, or spirits, something that has taken up residence in him with a thoroughness that has made him impossible to restrain, impossible to contain. He has broken chains. He has not been able to live among other people. He wanders the tombs, crying out, cutting himself on the stones. Whatever is happening to this man, whatever framework one uses to understand it, the result is a human being in profound, visible, physical, and psychological torment. Jesus encounters him and addresses what is within him. And what happens next is one of the most peculiar details in all the gospel accounts. The spirit's asked to be sent into a herd of pigs feeding nearby. Permission is given. The pigs rush down the steep bank and into the sea, and are drowned. 2,000 of them. What is most striking, for our purposes tonight, is the physical reality of what occurs. Whatever these spirits are, whatever one believes about their nature and origin, they are shown here to have a direct, measurable, physically observable effect on material reality. 2,000 animals, moved by something invisible, rushing collectively to their deaths. The man, sitting clothed and in his right mind, restored to himself. The herdsman, running to the city, reporting what they have seen. The people coming out to look, and finding the man, who everyone knew, whose chains they had themselves tried to fasten, sitting quietly, sane, restored. The spiritual and the physical are not, in this account, separate domains. The invisible presses directly on the visible. The unseen moves the seen. And the restoration of one man's interior life is accompanied by the most externally dramatic, physically undeniable evidence imaginable. And consider this: the townspeople, when they come and see what has happened, do not rejoice. They are afraid. And they ask Jesus to leave. The miracle is not in question. The reality of the restoration is not in question. It is the implications of it that disturb them. What kind of world is this, where these things can happen. Better, perhaps, for him to go. Better not to have to revise one's understanding of what is real. Let that thought drift away gently, without judgment. And let yourself be a little more willing than they were, tonight, to sit with the revision. We come now to death itself. A synagogue ruler named Jairus comes to Jesus in desperation. His daughter is dying. He falls at Jesus' feet, which is an act of profound humility for a man of his position, and he begs, "Please come. Please put your hands on her, so that she will live." The urgency is the urgency of every parent who has ever sat beside a sick child and felt the ground shifting beneath them. They set off. And then there is a delay. The woman in the crowd, the one who reached through and was healed, the one who was called daughter. A delay that costs time that Jairus does not have. And sure enough, before they arrive, a message comes from the house: "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any further." And Jesus says to Jairus, with a quietness that must have seemed almost incomprehensible in that moment, "Do not fear. Only believe." They arrive at the house. There is already mourning. The weeping and wailing that accompanied death in the ancient Near East, the immediate, communal expression of grief. Jesus says, "The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laugh at him. They know death. They have seen it. This is not sleep. He goes in. He takes the child by the hand. And he says to her, in Aramaic, the everyday language of the home, the language she would have heard since birth, Talitha Kumi, "Little girl, arise." And she gets up and walks. And he tells them to give her something to eat. That last detail, give her something to eat, is one of those small, grounding, extraordinarily human touches that appear throughout these accounts. The miracle does not hover above the ordinary. It lands in it. She is alive, and she is hungry, and she needs something to eat. Life, restored, requires to be fed. And consider this. There is another death. A man named Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, friends of Jesus. By the time Jesus arrives, Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days. This is not ambiguous. 4 days in a sealed tomb, in the Middle Eastern climate, leaves no room for the suggestion of a coma or a misdiagnosed death. Martha says it plainly when Jesus asks for the stone to be removed. "Lord, by this time there will be an odor." She is being practical and correct. 4 days is 4 days. And before the miracle, something happens that has moved countless readers over 2,000 years. Jesus weeps. He sees the grief of Mary, sees the grief of those around her, and he weeps. The shortest verse in the ancient text, Jesus wept, and perhaps one of the most quietly significant. Because here is the one who is about to demonstrate authority over death itself, and he is not above grief. He does not bypass it. He enters it. He weeps beside it. And then he calls Lazarus out of it. "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man comes out, still wrapped in his burial cloths. Unbind him, and let him go. And then, the resurrection of Jesus himself. This is the claim that stands at the center of the ancient faith, the claim that everything else either radiates from or collapses without. Not a resuscitation, like Lazarus, not a return to ordinary mortal life that would, in time, end again, but a transformation, a new kind of existence, a body that is physical, that can be touched, that eats, that bears the marks of wounds, and yet is no longer constrained by the ordinary physical laws. It appears in locked rooms. It is sometimes immediately recognized and sometimes not, as though it occupies the border between the familiar and the wholly new. The resurrection appearances are described by multiple witnesses, in multiple locations, over a period of 40 days. They are not described as visions or dreams or interior spiritual experiences. They are described as encounters, conversations, meals, the invitation to touch and examine. Thomas, who was not present at the first appearance, says flatly that he will not believe unless he can place his fingers in the nail marks and his hand in the wounded side. And Jesus comes again, a week later, and invites him to do exactly that. Do not be unbelieving, but believing. And Thomas's response, "My Lord and my God," is one of the most unambiguous declarations in the ancient text. The physical body, after resurrection, scarred, and yet glorious, recognizable, and yet transformed, present in the room, and yet no longer bound by what rooms ordinarily contain. The first of a new kind of existence, not the return to what was, but the arrival of what is coming. Let that thought move through you gently, like warmth. The body that bears its wounds and is not diminished by them. The life on the other side of death that is more, not less, than the life before it. And now, as we draw toward the final shore of tonight's journey, we come to the stories of provision, of matter transformed, of hunger met in ways that ordinary accounting cannot explain. A wedding in Cana of Galilee, a family celebration, and a small but socially significant crisis. The wine has run out. Mary, the mother of Jesus, tells him quietly, "They have no wine." His response is oblique, almost deflecting. But she turns to the servants and says, with a calm confidence that is somehow more striking than any dramatic proclamation, "Do whatever he tells you." There are 6 large stone water jars, used for ritual washing. Each holds between 80 and 120 liters. Jesus tells the servants to fill them with water. They fill them to the brim. He tells them to draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. And when the master tastes it, he calls the bridegroom aside and says something that has always carried a note of gentle comedy. Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. The best wine, saved for last. 6 stone jars, filled to the brim. Between 500 and 700 liters of water, transformed. Not into ordinary wine, but into wine that an expert recognizes as exceptional. Quality and quantity both, appearing from nothing, or rather, appearing from water and a word. And consider this, the transformation of matter from one thing to another, the apparent creation of complex organic compounds where moments before there was only water, is not something that any natural process or human technique can accomplish. Fermentation takes weeks or months. The development of flavor in wine takes years. What is described here is the instantaneous existence of something that, by every natural law, requires time and process to become what it is. The wine is not merely present. It is mature. It is good. It is, apparently, the best wine at the party. The word made matter. The command that reorganized the physical world as easily and as completely as a sentence reorganizes language. We drift on now, to a hillside. A crowd, a very large crowd, has been with Jesus all day, listening. And now it is late and they are hungry and there is nowhere nearby to buy food. The disciples suggest sending them away. And Jesus says, "You give them something to eat." They look at what they have. 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. For 5,000 men, not counting women and children. The arithmetic is devastating. There is no version of this that works. Jesus takes the loaves and fish. He looks up to heaven and gives thanks. He breaks them. And he gives them to the disciples to distribute. And they distribute. And everyone eats. And everyone is satisfied. And when they gather up the fragments left over, the pieces that remain after 5,000 people have eaten their fill, there are 12 baskets full. The feeding of 5,000 is one of the most widely attested events in the Gospel accounts. It is the only miracle described in all 4 Gospels. 4 independent accounts, each adding their own details, each consistent in the central claim. A crowd of thousands, fed from a handful of food, with more left over at the end than existed at the beginning. And it happens again. A different day, A different crowd. 4,000 people. 7 loaves, a few small fish. And again, everyone eats. And again, there are fragments gathered. 7 baskets this time. More, at the end, than at the beginning. As though the act of giving thanks and breaking and distributing does not diminish what is given, but multiplies it. And finally, a beach in the early morning, after a long night of fishing that caught nothing. A figure on the shore calls out, "Children, do you have any fish?" They do not. He tells them to cast the net on the right side of the boat. They do, and cannot haul the net in because of the quantity of fish. 153 large fish, counted carefully. The net, which should by rights have torn under the weight, does not tear. And breakfast is already prepared on the shore, bread and fish cooking over a charcoal fire. The provision was not only for the miraculous catch. It was already there, waiting, already being cooked. "Come and have breakfast," he says. And they do. In the early morning light, beside the lake where some of them had fished their whole lives, they eat breakfast with someone who had died and was no longer dead. The ordinary and the extraordinary, woven so completely together that it is impossible to say where one ends and the other begins. Fish, counted on a beach. Bread, broken on a hillside. Wine, at a wedding. And behind all of it, behind the calm storm and the walking on water and the little girl told to get up and the 4 days dead man told to come out, behind all of it, the same quiet, inexhaustible, endlessly patient generosity. Giving. Always giving. More than is asked, more than is expected, more than is possible, with baskets full of fragments left over. Let that be the last image your waking mind holds tonight. The fragments. The 12 baskets full of what remained after everyone had eaten their fill. The abundance that exceeds the need. The provision that arrives not in spite of the impossibility but through it. You have been held tonight by a long and beautiful story. By water and stars and ancient laws and healing hands and a lake made calm by a word and a breakfast on a shore and the best wine saved for last. Let it all settle now, soft and warm, into the deep places of sleep. You do not need to hold any of it. It will be there when you return. And still the night holds you. Still you are here, resting in this long and gentle darkness, carried softly by the current of these ancient stories. You have come so far tonight. From the first light of creation, the universe winking into existence from nothing, all the way to a beach in the early morning, where breakfast was cooking over coals and a net full of fish was too heavy to lift. From the water cycle and the hygiene laws of the desert, through the healings and the storms and the walking on water and the best wine saved for last. And now we go back, further back, before the beach and the hillside and the wedding at Cana. Back into an older layer of the story, into the world of the prophets, those remarkable, often solitary figures who moved through the ancient Near East like lightning rods for the impossible, in whose company the ordinary laws of the world seemed, again and again, to become negotiable. Let yourself sink a little deeper now. The thinking mind is quieter than it was an hour ago. The thoughts come more slowly, less insistently. Your body is doing what it was designed to do, and it is doing it beautifully. You only need to stay here, warm and still, and let these old and wonderful stories drift through you like music. We begin with fire. Elijah is one of the most vivid figures in all of ancient literature. A man of volcanic faith and surprising fragility. A prophet who could stand alone against an entire culture and its religious establishment, and who could also, in the aftermath of his greatest victory, collapse under a desert shrub and ask to die. He is, in other words, a fully human person. And the miracles that surround him are, perhaps for that reason, particularly striking. They do not happen to a symbol or an archetype. They happen to a man who gets tired, who gets afraid, who needs to eat and sleep and be spoken to gently. The confrontation on Mount Carmel is one of the most dramatic scenes in the ancient record. Elijah, alone, against 450 prophets of Baal. The challenge is stark and simple. Each side will prepare a sacrifice, and the God who answers by fire, who sends flame from heaven to consume the offering, that is the real God. The prophets of Baal go first. They cry out for hours. They dance around their altar. They cut themselves in their frenzy. Nothing comes. The wood lies unlit. The sacrifice lies untouched. And then Elijah prepares his altar. He arranges the wood and the offering. And then he does something that seems, in the circumstances, almost theatrical. He has the whole thing drenched with water. Not once, 3 times. Until the water runs down around the altar and fills the trench dug around it. He has made his own miracle harder. He has removed any possibility of a natural explanation involving concealed fire or dry wood or a trick of preparation. And then he prays. Simply, quietly, without theatrics. Let it be known, he says, that you are God. And fire falls. Not just onto the wood but consuming everything. The offering, the wood, the stones, the soil, the water in the trench. All of it. Gone. In a moment. The crowd falls on their faces. The 450 prophets are silenced. And then, after 3 years of drought, Elijah prays again, 7 times, bent over his knees on the mountaintop, and a small cloud appears on the horizon, and grows, and the rain comes. The long drought ended. Fire from heaven, and rain after drought. The 2 most elemental forms of provision and destruction, called and sent by a man on his knees. And consider this. The same Elijah, in a quieter moment, encounters a widow at the town of Zarephath. She is gathering sticks to make a final meal. She has a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug, and she intends to cook it for herself and her son, and then they will die. This is not metaphor. This is the arithmetic of famine. She has calculated it. It is almost done. Elijah asks her to make him a small cake first, and then make for herself and her son. He promises her that the jar of flour will not be used up and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day rain falls again. And she goes and does as he says. And the jar of flour does not run out. And the jug of oil does not run dry. Day after day, through the remainder of the drought, a handful of flour becomes enough. A little oil becomes sufficient. The minimum, the barely enough, holds. It does not grow spectacular. It does not overflow the jar. It simply does not run out. There is a particular tenderness in that. The miracle calibrated exactly to the need. Not abundance poured out dramatically, but the daily, quiet, undramatic sufficiency of just enough. The flour that is still there in the morning. The oil that has not been used up. The small mercy that arrives in the form of nothing remarkable. Only the absence of the ending that was supposed to come. Let that rest in you gently. The miracle of the thing that does not run out. The grace that is not spectacular but simply present. Still there. Enough. We drift forward now to Elijah's successor, Elisha, who asked, when Elijah was taken from him, for a double portion of his spirit, and who received what he asked for. The miracles surrounding Elisha have a particular character. They are often practical, domestic, embedded in the ordinary crises of ordinary people. And they are numerous. Perhaps more numerous than any other figure in the ancient record except for Jesus himself. A widow comes to Elisha in debt. Her husband has died, and his creditor is coming to take her 2 sons as slaves in payment. She has nothing in her house but a small jar of oil. Elisha tells her to go and borrow empty vessels from all her neighbors, as many as she can find. Not a few, he says. Many. And then to go inside and pour from her jar into the vessels. And she does. And the oil flows. It fills one vessel, and she asks her son for another. And he brings it, and she fills it, and another, until all the vessels are full. And then she says, "Bring me another vessel." And her son says, "There is not another." And the oil stops. The oil stopped when the vessels ran out. Not before. Not with a little left over in the jar as a sign. It filled exactly what was available to be filled. And then it stopped. As though the miracle was calibrated not to a fixed quantity but to the capacity of the faith and the preparation that went before it, to the number of empty vessels she had been willing to go and borrow. It is a detail worth resting in. The provision was limited not by what was available from the source, but by the size of the containers brought to receive it. And consider this. Elisha and the company of prophets are eating a stew, and someone has gathered wild goods of uncertain origin and added them to the pot. The men taste it and cry out, "There is death in the pot. The food is poisonous." And Elisha throws a handful of flour into the pot and says, "Serve it to the people." And there is no longer anything harmful in the pot. The neutralization of a biological toxin by the addition of flour, a substance with no known detoxifying properties, is not a description of natural chemistry. It is a description of authority over the natural world expressed through the most ordinary of materials. Not a rare herb, not a medicinal compound, not a process requiring time or expertise. Flour, in a pot of poison, and the poison is gone. Then there is the matter of an axe head. One of the sons of the prophets is cutting down a tree near the Jordan, and the iron axe head flies off the handle and falls into the water. And he cries out to Elisha with what is, in context, a very human distress. "Alas, master, for it was borrowed. It was not even his." The loss is practical, financial, embarrassing. Elisha asks where it fell. The man shows him the place. Elisha cuts a stick and throws it in at that spot. And the iron axe head floats to the surface. Iron. In water. Floating. Iron does not float. This is not a matter of degree or special circumstance. The density of iron is approximately 7.5 times that of water. There is no natural mechanism by which an iron axe head rises from a riverbed and floats. What is described here is not a bending of the rules but a direct reversal of one of the most fundamental principles of physical matter. And it is done for a borrowed axe head. For someone's embarrassment and financial difficulty. The same power that called fire from heaven attends to a man's borrowed tool at the bottom of a river. Let that thought rest lightly in you. The immensity and the intimacy of it. Fire from heaven and a floating axe head. From the same source, with the same ease. And now, Naaman, a general of the army of Aram. A powerful man, a great man, a man of consequence in the ancient world. And a leper. The power and the position and the wealth cannot address the one thing that matters most. And a young Israelite girl, a servant captured in a raid, tells her mistress that there is a prophet in Israel who could heal him. It is worth pausing over that detail. A captured slave girl, with no power and no status, speaking up about what she knows. Her word sets the whole story in motion. The general goes. He brings gifts and letters and the full weight of his official position. And Elisha, when Naaman arrives at his door with his horses and chariots and retinue, simply sends a messenger out to him with an instruction. Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored and you will be clean. Naaman is furious. He expected drama. He expected the prophet to come out personally, to make a ceremony of it, to call on the name of his God with appropriate solemnity and perhaps some striking gesture. Instead, go and wash in a river. He turns to leave. And his servants, practical, gentle, wise, come to him and say something quietly reasonable. If the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more, then, when he says simply, wash and be clean? He goes to the Jordan. He washes 7 times. And his skin is restored, like the skin of a young child. The powerful man, humbled by a simple instruction, healed by an ordinary river. The greatness of the miracle proportional not to the grandeur of the ceremony but to the willingness to do what seemed beneath him. Let yourself rest in that for a moment. The healing that comes not through what is impressive, but through what is simply obeyed. And now we come to an older and stranger kind of wonder. We come to death, and what happened to it when certain people drew near. Elijah, first, in the house of the widow of Zarephath. Her son becomes ill. His illness grows severe, until there is no breath left in him. The woman brings the child to Elijah, and Elijah carries the boy to the upper room and lays him on his bed. And he stretches himself out over the child 3 times, and prays, "O Lord my God, let this child's life come into him again." And the life of the child comes into him again. And he lives. And Elijah carries him down and gives him to his mother. The intimacy of it is striking. The physical posture, stretched over the child, as though offering warmth, as though the living body pressed against the dead might transfer something. The prayer not as a performance but as a plea. And the child restored, not with proclamation, but handed quietly back to his mother. And consider this. The pattern repeats in Elisha. A wealthy woman of Shunem had prepared a room for Elisha, a small upper room, furnished simply, kept for his use when he passed through. Out of gratitude, he had told her she would have a son, though her husband was old. And the son came, and grew, and one day, in the field during harvest, cried out to his father with a pain in his head, and was carried home, and sat on his mother's lap until noon, and died. The woman goes to Elisha. She does not tell her husband what has happened. She does not stop to weep. She rides hard to find the prophet. And when she reaches him, she falls at his feet, and Elisha's servant tries to push her away. And Elisha says, "Let her alone, for she is in bitter distress." He sees it. He does not make her explain it at length or manage her grief into appropriate form. He sees it, and he goes. He goes to the child. He closes the door. He prays. He lies on the child, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands, and the flesh of the child grows warm. He rises. He walks in the house. He lies on the child again. And the child sneezes 7 times, and opens his eyes. The sneezing is, somehow, one of the most human details in all of ancient literature. The body returning to itself, making its small involuntary sounds, asserting its presence in the ordinary way. The child opens his eyes. He is here. He is back. The mother comes in and falls at Elisha's feet and takes up her son and goes out. And then, perhaps the strangest resurrection of all. Elisha is dead and buried. A year or more has passed. Some men are burying another man, and they suddenly encounter a raiding party, and in their panic they throw the body into the nearest available tomb, which happens to be Elisha's. And when the body touches the bones of Elisha, the man revives. He stands on his feet. The prophet, dead and buried, still transmitting something. A life that did not entirely end at the ending. Bones that still carried enough of what Elisha had carried in life to bring a dead man back. It is inexplicable and unclassifiable, and it stands in the ancient record as a kind of final, oblique testimony to a life that burned so brightly that even its remnants held fire. Let that image settle quietly into you. The bones that still held something. The life that could not be entirely contained, even by death. And now we come to a different kind of wonder entirely. We come to a nation, to a whole people, to events that unfolded not in a quiet upper room or beside a river, but across an entire country, witnessed by millions, recorded not only in the ancient religious texts but alluded to in Egyptian records and confirmed by archaeological investigation across multiple sites. The plagues of Egypt are among the most studied sequences of events in the ancient record. Their sheer scale sets them apart from the personal and the intimate miracles we have been resting in. These were national events. Events that affected crops and water supplies and livestock and human health across a whole civilization. in a sequence that built in intensity toward a final, devastating conclusion. We will rest tonight with just 3 of them, and what they suggest about the intersection of the supernatural and the physical world. The first of our 3 is water turned to blood. The Nile, the artery of Egyptian civilization, the source of its agriculture, its drinking water, its transportation, its fertility, turned. The water became undrinkable. The fish died. The river stank. This is described as a direct supernatural act, and it is received as one. But modern researchers studying the plagues have noted something interesting. There are natural phenomena, specifically, the bloom of certain red algae and toxic cyanobacteria, that can turn river water red and render it toxic to fish and undrinkable for humans. The Nile has experienced such events. The question, in the ancient account, is not what happened but when, and by whom, and at what word it was released. The supernatural and the natural are not always opposites. Sometimes the miracle is in the timing, in the precision, in the fact that it began when it began and ended when it ended, at the word of a specific man, in response to the refusal of a specific king. And consider this, the plagues that followed had, many of them, direct public health dimensions. Frogs covering the land, dying in heaps and causing disease. Flies and lice swarming. Livestock dying. And then the boils, a painful, eruptive skin condition that fell on the Egyptians and their animals alike. A biological suffering that modern dermatologists have speculated might correspond to any number of infectious or inflammatory conditions that could follow a disrupted ecosystem, contaminated water, and the kind of cascading environmental crisis the earlier plagues would have produced. What is described, in sequence, is something that a modern epidemiologist might recognize as a cascading public health disaster, each phase producing conditions that enabled or worsened the next. Contaminated water, producing dead fish, producing frogs leaving the water, producing insects breeding in decay, producing disease in animals and humans. The natural mechanisms are visible beneath the supernatural framework, like a skeleton beneath skin. And yet the sequence is not random. It follows a logic and a direction, each plague announced in advance, each with a specified duration, each lifting when the word was given. The power of it is not diminished by the natural mechanisms it may have employed. If anything, it is deepened. The one who could orchestrate the timing and the sequence of a cascading environmental catastrophe, using the instruments of the natural world itself, that is a different and perhaps more awe-inspiring kind of authority than one who simply overrides nature wholesale. The conductor is not less than the instrument. The conductor is what makes the instrument say what it was not going to say on its own. And then there is the bronze serpent. In the wilderness, the people of Israel are bitten by snakes, venomous serpents that have come among the camp, causing suffering and death. Moses is instructed to make a bronze serpent and set it on a pole. And anyone who has been bitten and looks at the bronze serpent will live. This is one of those ancient accounts that sits at the intersection of medicine and mystery, of symbol and reality, of physical cause and inexplicable effect. The bite of a venomous snake causes real, physical, measurable damage, tissue necrosis, hemorrhage, neurological effects, systemic toxicity. There is no natural mechanism by which looking at a bronze image reverses these effects. And yet the ancient account says that it did. That the act of looking, of lifting one's eyes, of orienting oneself toward the designated point of healing, produced real, physical recovery from a real, physical injury. What is perhaps most remarkable is that this image, the serpent on the pole, was later used in the ancient record as a symbol pointing forward to something else entirely. Jesus, in conversation with a rabbi named Nicodemus, refers to it directly. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. The ancient symbol, given centuries before, interpreted as a foreshadowing of something that had not yet occurred, a healing not of snake venom, but of something older and deeper and harder to name. The serpent on the pole. Eyes lifted. And life, where death had been taking hold. Let that image carry you now, slowly and softly, toward the deepest part of the night. Let the images of this long evening drift through you without grasping. Fire from heaven and an axe head floating in flour in a pot of poison and a child sneezing back to life and bones that still carried fire and a river turned and a pole lifted in a wilderness and eyes raised toward it and people, bitten and dying, finding that something in the looking was enough. You have been in the company of extraordinary things tonight. Things that cannot be explained, only received. Things that point, each in their own way, in the same direction, toward a care that does not end. A provision that does not run out. A power that attends to borrowed tools and dying children and poisoned stew and the particular, unrepeatable suffering of each individual person it encounters. You are not forgotten tonight. You are not overlooked. Whatever your particular weight is, whatever the thing that sits most heavily in the place just behind your eyes, it is known. It has been known for longer than you have been alive. And the same patience that waited for Naaman to humble himself and wash, the same gentleness that handed a revived child back to his mother without fanfare, the same quiet sufficiency that kept the flour from running out day after day, it is here. In this room. In this night. In the slow, faithful rhythm of your breathing. The vessels you bring are enough. Whatever you have brought tonight, the weariness, the worry, the questions that don't have answers, the grief that doesn't have a timetable, they are enough. The oil will fill them. The flour will hold. There will be something left in the jar in the morning. Let your eyes grow heavy now. Let the last thoughts soften and dissolve. The night is deep and dark and full of quiet mercy, and it is asking nothing of you but this: to rest, to let go, to sleep. The story continues. There is more wonder on the other side of morning. But for now, for this long and beautiful night, you have heard enough. You have rested in enough. Let it all sink down into the deep places, where healing happens without your awareness, where the body and the mind and the spirit do their slow and faithful work in the dark. You are held. You are safe. You are loved in ways you will spend a lifetime only beginning to understand.